I'd like to call this meeting to order. Historic Preservation Commission, Tuesday, April 21st, 2015. Please note that all commissioners are present. First item on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes for March 17th.
I have a couple of corrections. First off, in the first item with the vote, since I was not present in the room, I didn't abstain. I'm just simply not here.
Okay.
Okay, so you just don't count me in the
She didn't
totals
vote.
and don't say I
Okay.
abstained.
Yeah, she had to recuse herself.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I?
You put that she abstained.
Oh, gosh, okay, gotcha, never mind.
And then secondly, on page 8, the last paragraph, where the concluding comments, the third line down, the line is, "It was a historic building designed by a local architect, and it had structural integrity." I mean, if you want to review the tape, you can, but I'm pretty sure I said architectural integrity.
Probably.
Right, any other corrections? All right, if there's no corrections, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as corrected?
I have to abstain because I wasn't here.
Okay. Solomon, that you were gone too.
I was going to.
All
I have to
right.
abstain.
I
Okay,
moved
I'll
in.
I'll move
All
that
right.
we,
Second,
I'll second then.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we don't have any building permit applications tonight, but our next item on the agenda is a concept review for 28 North First Street.
Good evening, Commissioners. The project before you is a concept review for a very simple request to alter some windows in the addition to the former Rate House that was built in 1852. The Rate House is the building portion to the far right in the images, and the additions are to the left. The proposal is to take where there is a single window and to install two windows. This proposal does not impact the historic portion of the building, but does potentially have alterations or has a visual alteration to the addition. So with that, I would like to turn the discussion over to Steve Vasilian from Vasilian Architects, who can further elaborate on their request.
Hello.
Good evening, how are you?
Good.
Good. It's pretty straightforward. The existing windows are Pella. They are old, they're single pane with an attached storm on the inside, so we're not going to be able to duplicate the exact window, but we are going with a Pella window product that's as close to it as possible. We're going to match the stone header and sill. That's just basic Indiana limestone. There's nothing special about it. We will replace the masonry in the center where the one window is removed. We'll tooth it in rather than just, fill in the opening. So we'll make it as clean as we can.
Are you gonna, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Are you gonna reuse the brick to try to, the brick you take out?
Yes, that's the idea.
Just hope you can match the mortar close enough. That's the-
We'll do our best, yeah.
That's the tough part.
And I would love for it to be a formal approval, but I didn't have construction drawings finished by the time we applied. We went in for a permit today for this work, so I don't know if you're able to amend that or if that's a no-no, but we would if we could.
Yeah.
I think we can.
Okay. Any other comments?
Can that be done administratively then?
can I ask the purpose of splitting the windows? Is there, or do you want to divide that particular area
There's
with
10,
a
yeah,
wall?
10 issues inside,
I see.
and it makes the space more attractive as a leasing thing.
I mean, okay, I'm not going to vote for it because I think it's fine, but at the same time, you've got window over window, window over window. This is the only place then on that facade where you're not going to have window over
Right.
window.
Yeah, if it was in the
wonder,
historic building, it wouldn't even be a question.
Would, that addition, when was the addition put on?
I could not find a date for the addition. It happened sometime before 1999 and after 1952. That's the closest I could zero it in on.
Close.
I think it was
Considering
around
it's hollow
1970.
windows.
It was in the 70s. Tom Emma did it.
I'm not sure it's gained historicity.
Right.
My
It has
native
not
word.
gotten historicity yet.
When is historicity here?
50 years.
50 years? So it's not 30, it's 50.
Right.
It is
Okay.
50. Have you considered moving the bottom window, or does that window work for your tenant?
Well, the tenant at issue is the third floor tenant. It would be disruptive to the second floor tenant who doesn't need the extra window changes.
Okay, I wasn't sure if they were taking the whole
Right.
building or just the third floor. Just to maintain that rhythm.
Sure, I can appreciate that.
I agree with Nanette that it would be better to have 4 windows there, but I'm okay with this.
You'd really want to go all the way down and move the, and break the, and go 3 over 3.
Yeah.
And of course, the Secretary of Interior Standards does seek for differentiation between the historic building and the addition. So, it's 6 one, half dozen the other as to.
As I said, it was
Yeah.
simply a visual thing.
Right.
It's an aesthetic thing, not Secretary of Interior standard thing.
And the ones you're taking out are clad wood?
It's a clad window.
Okay, so you're replacing
We're
it with
replacing it
almost
with a
exact-
clad window, yes, yes. And it will be sized to fit the opening rather than, having filler or trim pieces around it. That always annoyed me when I see that, when I served on Geneva, Batavia's HPC for 10 years, and that kind of stuff always frosted me.
Well, now it's one opening now, and you're going to put in 2 windows. How are you going to match the brick to enclose the opening, which will no longer have a window in it?
Well, we've got 2 windows worth of brick we're taking out
Okay.
to fill 1 brick opening.
Okay, good, thank you.
And I think the owner will actually like having a few spares for other issues. By the way, this is my very first Photoshop effort. Are you proud of me?
Not bad.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments? Nope. This is not something that we can do administratively, I have you do.
No, I mean, it was put forward as a concept review, so we
Okay.
would have to put it on an agenda as a permit review.
Okay.
To be fair to every
Can
other
we
applicant.
make a motion that when it becomes before us as a permit review, that it could be a staff review instead?
I suppose you could do that. It would go
Okay.
against what the building review
Yeah.
table matrix that we created, and so I would like to stay consistent to that.
We have to be careful.
This is a change on a principal facade, so I think, again, we'd be better off procedurally just to follow the process we've put out
Got
there.
it.
The
Okay.
one question I have for you, Michael, is we filed for the building permit today. Would the building permit approval be held up while we wait for the next scheduled HPC meeting?
Unfortunately.
Because that's problematic for us. We're under a really tight deadline. So I understand the desire to be consistent procedurally. It would sure be nice if it wouldn't hold up our building permit.
Do you have to order the window?
We do.
How long does that take?
Yeah, it's Pella though, so it's probably not.
Yeah, Pella should have a pretty quick turnaround.
It's in West Chicago, too.
Yes.
They might have it in West Chicago. I don't see an issue with, as long as they match what we approved here. I mean, it just seems like such a simple thing, unless something changes from a concept to the.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I think that's the key, and,
And it won't. We've already submitted, we've got the drawings done, I've got the cut sheet,
And as far as the matrix go, if we direct you to not follow the matrix, isn't that sufficient?
It just comes down to the precedent. So then are we going
Yeah, and-
to keep doing this?
I think we need to follow our accepted procedure.
I mean, I would almost say it's okay to order it, and, I mean, I think we have a positive vote.
Well, and I think that, again, to be fair to applicants, we had somebody turn something in about a day late, and I did make them wait till next month, which they were fine with. But I think, again, if we're going to set a policy and a standard, there's always going to be gray areas and exceptions to it, but I think that's unfair to other applicants who we've made wait at different times. I hate to do that to you, but I just think we need to keep a sense of fairness in our proceedings.
I don't want this happening every month.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we get people all the time saying, I know the meeting's next Monday, can I still get on the agenda, or whatever, next Tuesday, so.
Well, you would know better than we would, because of course we only see the,
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. But I feel fairly confident with you ordering the window and
Well, the
getting
thing
your
is,
stuff
it's the
ready.
building permit. I mean, if
I
building
know.
permit gets turned around in 2 weeks, we can't get the building permit because we've got to wait until we're back on the agenda. And so we have 2 weeks' worth of construction time with a looming occupancy date.
but you can get the interior permit, just split it up.
I don't know if the building department will
You could split up the
let
interior
us
and the
do
exterior.
that.
We have done that in the past,
Yeah.
so that shouldn't be a problem.
Because this is the only exterior.
It's the only exterior work we're doing.
So you can be
Yeah.
working on the interior,
If they issue us the interior
Once-
building permit separately, then I don't think that's problematic for us.
that, there. and-
Okay.
And then you just put in the window, pop it in.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay.
And they've done that in some other cases where they're waiting on HPC approval, and everything else is good to go on the interior. The building division has done that.
Great.
So
I
we'll
appreciate
work with
that.
them.
Thank you.
All right. So there's no vote, but everyone is okay with this?
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
Great. Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
evening.
Next item on the agenda is continued draft historic preservation ordinance discussion.
This is our ongoing discussion of the historic preservation ordinance. What you have before you, what was distributed as part of the agenda packet, is the revised text and language. Again, to review for people who may have picked up a copy off of the table there, and for the commissioners, the green text is text that was recommended by the commission at our last review of this on March 17th. March 10th. The orange text is text that was inserted by staff based upon the comments that were made. We made some revisions. We added some, streamlined some language, added some definitions and things in such as that. What I would defer to the chair is if you would like to go through each section fairly quickly to just review the language, and where you have questions, I'm glad to answer
Yep.
the questions.
If we can do that for each section, and then we'll have a discussion we can open up to the public too, and
Okay,
on that section.
okay. Again, you may want to lump a couple sections together where there's simple changes, but I'll leave that to you. But the purpose, basically, the only thing we did there was make the language parallel throughout the ordinance. So we used the phrase building structures, objects, and sites. You'll find that's a correction that's been made throughout the entire document. Instead of talking about properties and structures, we've kept that uniform. Under definitions, based on comment, we have revised the comment for applicant, which now defines as a group of residents or an association whose membership includes residents of the city of Geneva, again, putting in the resident requirement. Okay.
Good.
We identified the term block face with a new definition, which is one side of a street located between the intersections of that street and two consecutive features, which may be other streets or boundaries of identifiable geographic areas.
So would an alley be included in that?
An alley could be a street that perhaps dead ends into a park or some other feature. The park or the, whatever that feature might be, would be the other feature.
Okay, and then I don't mean to be persnickety, but going back to applicant,
Yes.
or a group, let's see, it says an owner of record or its agents or representative, or another interested party who is a resident of the city of Geneva, or a group of residents or an association whose membership includes residents of the city of Geneva. So we're saying there must be more than one?
Correct.
So the association must have minimum 2 residents of Geneva involved,
Correct. Yep. Correct.
okay, not just one.
Not just one, it has to be 2 or more.
And is that, did we say that?
I don't know if you had the S plural in my reading of it and listening to the conversation. I assume that you would want to have more than a single resident as a group of a group or a membership based on the conversation. So if you'd like to strike the S, we can go back and strike that. But my assumption was that you wanted to have some kind of representation of resident membership.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that.
Everybody's okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we
are.
understood that we're talking about more than one resident
Yes, it is more than one.
in an association.
Correct.
Okay.
Going to page 3, demolition by neglect was not defined previously, and so we, and that was a term that the commission asked to have defined, so we have put in a definition there. Any voluntary, involuntary act or process which results in a failure to maintain a building, structure, object, or site in sound condition when such act or process over a period of time results in the visible deterioration or removal in whole or in part of any improvement or site. I did not write these definitions in the most part. I may have modified them some, but I did refer to other documents that have gone down this path before.
You plagiarized them.
No, I sought counsel from,
There we go.
from other learned sources.
There you go. I like
I couldn't resist.
Finding a fact was another item that one or more of you commissioners had asked to be defined. And so finding a fact are the conclusions found to be true as determined by the commission from an examination of the underlying evidence and testimony of a case under consideration in accordance with established review criteria. Historic landmark, I believe Commissioner Anderson found a error in, I think I had a typo there, that's all that is correcting, is the last sentence was corrected to say influence a particular period of time or aesthetic movement. I believe I had just forgotten a few words, somehow had gotten cut off in the last version, so we completed that sentence. Non-contributing property, the only change in there is that I've identified, instead of just conservation district, I'm using the term neighborhood conservation district throughout, so that's the only change there. And then landscape feature was asked to be identified, so the definition reads character defining elements which are associated with the architectural or cultural significance of a site or property, including but not limited to naturally occurring topographical forms, intentionally designed lawns, hedges, walkways, driveways, fences, walls, arbors, pergolas, trellises, terraces, water features, topography, lighting standards, and furnishings. I think we have covered every landscape feature definition that I could locate.
What about trees?
How about shrubbery? Hedges.
Do you want alterations? Did all of you hear what the comments were here? Do you
Just
want to?
vague.
Well, it says but not limited to.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know if we need to list everything. There might be a,
Yeah, I think it
you know,
might not be a
2
great
paragraphs
idea.
worth of things we could list.
Okay.
What is important about the last phrase is, the last portion of that definition is intentionally designed. So, if you want to insert any of those phrases, it would be important to insert it at that point. Are we good? Okay.
Good.
Neighborhood Conservation District is just, the reason it's in orange there is it was moved when it changed from Conservation District. The definition stays the same, but it was moved from Conservation District under C to under N for Neighborhood Conservation District. So that definition hasn't changed from your previous versions. Owner consent, staff felt that was a term that wasn't clearly defined, and so we added the definition of the act or result of reaching consensus and agreement through reason and deliberation by the owners of real estate when historic designations proposed at the suggestion of another party. And then the last change is on page 7, which under significant property, again, some grammatical changes to be consistent with the rest of the document, capitalizing historic district and adding the term neighborhood conservation district. you like me to
Should we
stop
keep going?
there or keep going?
Any questions from the public on the definitions? Yes.
Under, and I think you mentioned the applicant, the definition of an applicant under definition. I asked the question at the last meeting whether groups and associations had to be nonprofit, and the answer that I heard was no, they could be for-profit. Yet, when you look, you don't see that. In fact, under 3.3.3Q, it refers to cooperation with nonprofit. Should that be changed to cooperation with nonprofit and profit? Is it your intention to have for-profit corporations as part of the definition of outside associations?
Could you repeat the section you just
What was the
referenced?
reference?
Yes, it's 3.3.3Q.
What he is looking at is the organizational Title III. Is that what I'm assuming you're looking at if you're saying 3.3?
I think it's on page 1, isn't it?
Oh, on page 1.
3.3.3.
Oh, like the.
Oh, okay. Yeah, page 1.
I don't think I printed out that part.
Yeah, it was from our original packet.
Okay.
So if
The
you,
section known as.
It just seems to me,
if you type in page 17 to your little, on the computer, on the PDF, it'll bring you right there.
It's Title III of the city code that actually establishes the commission, is what Mr. Smirchus is referring to.
Yeah,
It's
the
not- it's not part of
authority.
the document you're looking at.
Oh, I got you.
I was hoping to get away without doing this thing.
gives you the authority to cooperate with nonprofit organizations, and you're later talking about cooperating with for-profit organizations. So I don't know if they need to be compatible in language, or if when you refer to a outside organization, you have to call it for-profit and not-for-profit.
Well, I don't think this item that Mr. Smirch is bringing up is definitely, is referring to the applicants. This is referring to all sorts of different organizations. For instance, government bodies or agencies or not-for-profit organizations such as the National Trust for Historic Preservation. We may want to, they may bring something to our attention that we want to work with the National Trust on, or Landmarks Illinois, or some of these advocacy
all
types of
nonprofit.
groups. Right. So I don't think this is, item Q is not referring to applicants as defined here. This is referring to the types of groups that the commission is entitled to work with or is encouraged to work with.
Okay,
This
so
is not
now
for
when
applicants.
when you do get to the definition of who can apply, you're referring to associations or organizations. So my question hasn't been answered, or at least, I'm assuming you're saying, I don't know what you're saying. I'm trying to figure out, does the organization include for-profit organizations?
Yeah, we don't distinguish between for-profit or not-for-profit in our definition. I don't think we even ask in an application in anything at the city whether they're a not-for-profit or a nonprofit.
Oh, yeah,
All this is getting to the item Q that you're asking about is the types of organizations.
No, I accept your answer
So,
to
but
Q.
but applicants can be any group of people, as long as they are resident members, whether they're profit, nonprofit, whether they're ad hoc. I mean, they might not be organized as a not-for-profit.
That's the same
organization.
answer you gave last time, and I'm just saying, does that have to be documented, or do we leave it up to when it comes up as a practical item, somebody standing up and saying, is it, it's a for-profit?
I mean, if it's, they're saying all applicants, it's not differentiating whether they're profit or nonprofit. It's a applicant or an
Okay, so
organization that includes residents.
so the answer is a for-profit organization could apply,
Yes.
but it's not reflected in the code.
No.
Okay.
It's reflected because it's not defined.
Right. It's silent on the.
I understand. I have a clear understanding of what you're saying, so I accept what you're saying.
That's
I don't agree with it, but I accept it.
So, just so I understand, because I just found it, sorry, as I said, I'd hoped to get away with not booting up my computer. The Q that you're referring to is referring to the scope of our authority, not to applicants at all. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay,
I understand that now.
Right, I'm making sure I understand it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other question on definitions?
Yeah, the landscaping, that hasn't been part of the code in the past. It's been part of, I guess, practical application. The extent to the definition of landscaping, I'm thinking, is this organization going to be talking about the plants and whether or not they existed in 1887? How are you going to get into that kind of detail?
That's why I said the phrase that's important there is intentionally designed. It gets to a landscape that may have been designed as part of the architecture. For instance, Frank Lloyd Wright designed specific landscapes for his homes to sit in. They become integral to his architecture. So it's intentionally designed is the phrase there, not, and we do identify also naturally occurring. So for instance, there is a community not far from here that has landmarked their buffalo trace. It's one of the few buffalo traces left in the area. But it's got to be something that has a physically defined
So
feature.
for practical purposes, you're not going to be getting into plants and trees and.
We're not
Unless
horticulturists.
it's a very unusual
We do
original
do
plan.
landscapes, we do landscapes, but typically, I don't remember us saying specifically like this has to be a heirloom rose or something like that.
Okay. Okay.
This is not expanding the existing tree ordinance. This is not an expansion of that at all.
Okay.
That's not where we're at.
Now, you got into the landmarking, and I do have a question about landmarking, and forgive me, it's not a new question.
Marty, is that
the
in the
word-
definition section? We're in the definition section.
You're just in the definition section.
So we
I
are-
thi-
Dealing with it at the moment.
Okay.
Okay.
You're not talking about the definition of landmark?
No, I'm finished with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. See, Marty, if we keep you coming up and going down, then... If we keep you coming up and going down, then you'll stay awake.
You're gonna wear me.
All right, 1063?
1063, the only issue there was, again, an unfinished sentence, and so we added artisan. That's the only issue under bullet point 3.
All right, how about 1064?
1064, review and standards for historic districts and landmarks. That was not changed by any commission comments in the past. If you have discovered something new, I'm glad to address that.
1065?
Historic landmarks and historic districts. 1065 has not changed in that section.
Okay.
You want to take a break there because 106 does have quite a bit of discussion. Or do you want me to
I think
continue?
let's just go to 1066 and get the discussion over with.
Okay. 1066 is historic landmark designation. This language throughout this section has been revised based on the fairly lengthy discussion amongst commissioners about process and procedure and public input on the same topic. So the pre-application meeting has been further defined and clarified, and it is still calling for a pre-application meeting with the applicant, and also a requirement for the preservation planner to encourage the applicant to discuss the proposal for a nomination with the owner of record.
Does everyone agree with that? I think we, okay.
I'm good.
Item, or point 2 there is, again, was the commission's desire to have parallelism in the language, and so that is parallel throughout the ordinance. And we do not make a substantive change, we do not make a change until section 3, which is under fees. And what we've done, Dave and I worked together to define what those fees are and to make it consistent with the application fees for zoning applications as well. So we have tried to make it, again, parallel to city practice in other portions of the ordinance, of the city code, rather. To read, just so those who are listening to this in the audience or in the future, that section now reads that fees are excluding the commission or the owner of record when acting on its own initiative. The applicant for the proposed designation of any historic landmark shall be required to pay an application deposit and shall bear all costs associated with the application designation process. The application deposit shall be used to cover the costs of direct expenses, including but not limited to public notice publication, mailings, and recordation and transcription of public meetings and/or hearings, attorney's fees, and/or staff time. A minimum application deposit required shall be established from time to time by the city council. Said deposit requirement shall be enacted by ordinance. The minimum application deposit shall be clearly identified on the historic landmark application form provided by the city.
So is that going to be developed at a later date and not part of the ordinance?
Correct, that is how it's handled with the plan commission and then zoning cases.
Okay.
I don't believe recordation is a word.
I think it, yeah.
It actually
I've heard
is.
it.
Recordation is good.
Recording.
Recordation is actually
Recordation.
a word.
Yeah, but, I mean, if you have mailings and recording, you don't need recordation. I think that is, I would prefer to use plain language.
Wasn't recordation, the documentation process?
You don't say mailingation.
If you would like, we could change that to recording and transcribing of public meetings.
That's fine if you,
I'm good with
Is
the way
is
it
that,
is.
It's fine.
you're fine with which?
Recordation.
Me too.
so I guess kind of where I'm getting at is, and I think Marty brought this up before, was if I go in to nominate something, is there going to be kind of like a cheat sheet that's going to say, okay, I have a minimum deposit of this, and I know you can't document court costs and attorney fees and stuff like that, but,
But some fees you would know.
Right, the city council establishes annually, if I'm correct, the fees for, that are charged in deposits and what have you.
Okay.
So they will set those fees, and then we will incorporate that into
The
whatever form we
application.
have available for the application. We'll develop that.
so when you go in, you're going to have an idea anyway of what it's going to
Correct.
cost. Okay.
But I thought the best part was the last sentence where it says the minimum application deposit shall be clearly identified on the application.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that up at the top or somewhere, it's going to say that the minimum deposit is, and I'm just throwing out a figure, $500, so that everybody knows right up front what the minimum is.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good thing.
And that's set by the city council.
Yes.
Okay.
Have they already set that, or would this be a new setting?
That would be something that they would set if this ordinance was adopted. For example, with the Plan Commission application fees, we did a study of our costs that we incurred over a 3-year period, and then set the deposit requirement based on the average cost per application. So we would probably use that as kind of an example in recommending a minimum deposit for landmark
Okay.
nominations.
What was that number?
It's a $500 minimum deposit to cover the public hearing costs, the notice, the transcribing, the recording.
Recordation.
Yes. And then there's also a $1,000 deposit for any legal review.
Okay.
So the combination here, not having an application fee, we would probably recommend something higher than $500 to cover staff time and some legal review.
Okay, so, and it's deposit, which means that if you spend less, they get the money back?
Right, and if we spend more, they have to replenish the
Right.
deposit.
But a deposit implies that it's not a fee.
Yeah.
It's a deposit that they may get back.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Continuing on page 15, the question was raised about calendar and working days, and I will try to identify this all the way through, but we've tried to identify calendar days and working days, and there is a differentiation in parts of the ordinance where that makes more sense to have one or the other. So we have identified calendar days throughout this section as far as notice of hearings. And again, that's based on the mechanics of publishing for public hearing, the time between meetings and what have you. And so we've tried to give a reasonable amount of time. So for instance, the notice of public hearing follows the standard procedure in the city of not less than 15 calendar days and not more than 30 calendar days. The erection of the sign at a site is not less than 10 calendar days in advance of the public hearing. And again, based on the conversation at our last review of this, the sign is to be placed on the public right-of-way adjacent to the property.
Excellent.
And then the mail notice goes out not less than 10 calendar days prior to the public hearing. Items 7 and 8 in that same section, the public hearing shall be conducted by the Historic Preservation Commission, and a record of such proceedings shall be preserved in such manner as prescribed by the commission from time to time. Again, we simplified the language from kind of outdated, archaic language from the old ordinance and just made it more user-friendly, if you will. Then withdrawal by the applicant, we clarify that further, that an applicant may withdraw and write an application for historic landmark designation at any time. Prior to that, previously we had a set number of days before the public hearing. We can allow it to be withdrawn any time.
And then whatever deposit they have that has not been spent, returned.
Would be returned, correct.
I have a question. Didn't we at one time talk about a pre-application meeting with the applicant?
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Didn't we at one time talk about a pre-application meeting?
Yes, we
Is that-
discussed that just a few moments ago in this section. It's the,
Right at the
it's the
front
very
of that
first
section.
item under 10.6.6.
Oh, okay.
Page 13.
Oh, okay.
13.
Thanks.
That's right. I've read enough too that it's another thing I've forgotten or missed something.
Okay.
Then under item 9, commission action, page 16 of 54, we've modified the second paragraph again to clarify some points. What we've done is change the language to say a public hearing may be continued to a date certain in the event that the commission determines that additional information unavailable at the public hearing is warranted and necessary for the purpose of making a finding of fact or to provide time to fully evaluate new evidence presented at the public hearing. We inserted the word or, I believe that was and before. In the case of an application for historic landmark designation for a property nominated with or without owner consent, the commission by a simple majority vote may forward a recommendation to grant or deny the application for historic landmark designation. That comes directly out of the conversation that some of you had that we had in there some kind of complicated language for two-thirds and not two-thirds. And the reality is that we are a recommending body to the city council, so our recommendations can go forward to the city council just on a simple majority vote. Then we further clarify the commission shall make written findings of fact and shall submit same together with its recommendation to the city council within 45 calendar days following the close of the public hearing. And if the commission does fail to act within 45 days of the final adjournment of a public hearing for the designation of a historic landmark, the commission shall deem to recommend denial. So again, that puts a time limit on our time for action once we've had all of the facts and the public hearing is officially closed. Under Section 10, the city council action, the city council shall grant or deny the application for historic landmark designation. Again, that's based on the recommendation of the commission. And we still are requiring that property nominated without owner consent would require a city council a vote of a two-thirds majority or greater. The balance of this section, Section 10, is again cleaning up language more than anything. It does identify the applicant, that the notice of designation will be sent by the city clerk to the applicant and the owners of record of the building, structure, object, property, or site, again being consistent with the language we've used. And we cleaned up the older language from from the existing ordinance just to say the Kane County Recorder of Deeds. And then we have further stipulated that a copy of the record ordinance shall be returned to the Community Development Department within 60 calendar days of City Council approval of a historic landmark designation. And I see that there is a capitalization missing on the word landmark, which I will pick up. Continuing through that section on page 17, we, based on commission discussion about the suspension of work, we clearly identified that the work that would be suspended would be any work requiring a building permit after the filing of a historic landmark application. So that's not left vague any longer.
Do you read it, does everyone read it that way?
It read kind of weird to me too, but I've been reading it over and over and over again.
Yeah, I just,
And I think I understand. There's just a lot of commas.
yeah,
But I think it says what it should say.
okay.
Yeah, issued after the filing.
Would be subject to a building permit. Yeah, that's okay. Paul, how else do you see it?
Yeah, it's a run-on, but I think it makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, good.
I think everybody's just read over it so many times, it's becoming a little blurry.
Yeah.
All right, item 12.
Item 12, again, is cleaning up language primarily, again, to make it parallel with the rest of the, ordinance. So if a landmark designation is denied by the commission and/or the city council, no application of the historic landmark designation of the same building, structure, object, property, or site may be made within the 12 months. We have not changed the time frame there, we've just cleaned up the language.
Okay.
And then, if an application withdrawn by an applicant prior to review by the commissioner or city council, a subsequent application may be submitted at any time. We did not identify that previously, and some of the commissioners had raised that point as to when another application could be made upon withdrawal. Item 13 about amendments, it was strictly a grammatical error that had said an amendment application. We meant to say an amended application. And then finishing off that section, we have the standards for designation of historic landmarks. And the only change there was, again, at the very last sentence under 5G. It was erroneously typed before as historic district instead of historic landmark.
Okay.
Good.
So did anyone have a question on 10.6.6.6? Yes. Liz?
Hi, Liz Safanda, 1013 Dunstan Road, Geneva. It's under fees. That thing is just so loose, and it sort of concerns me that it might be a real deterrent to filing an application. So David, you said you thought that what the average right now in other, like the zoning board or whatever, is $500, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let's say you accept this, or you modify it, or accept parts of this, whatever, by June 1st, and somebody comes in June 15th and they want to nominate something, will there be an established fee at that time, do you think?
When we take this forward to the city council, we'll move it forward with a recommendation on the fees.
You will, okay. So if that's at the end of May, for example, you will come forward with fees.
Yes.
Okay, so question number 2 on that is, if somebody is going forward, let's say that I wanted to nominate Gerard Keating's house, which has already been landmarked, but just using it as a good neutral example. And I go forward and you say 500 and then a deposit of $1,000 for legal fees? But then what if this is escalating? At what point can I ever get a sense of where this might be? And if it's worth my time, it's a fair bit of effort to go forward and document a a site and make a presentation. And I'm just really pretty concerned that this is a deterrent. I mean, I definitely agree there should be fees and that they should be not just be just superficial. But I am concerned that at some point the applicant is going to go, oh my God, I got to pull back out of this. And, if I knew in my mind that there was a cap here, for example, then I might feel more comfortable with it. So I don't know, do either of you staff or any, looking at other situations in other communities? Do you have any sense of how this could be handled so it doesn't get out of control? Applicant pulls back, now they've wasted their kind of considerable research that they've done.
How is it handled for planning? I mean, for planning and zoning?
Well, for planning, if they exceed the deposit requirement, they are invoiced or asked to submit another deposit to cover additional costs. That is, there's usually an economic interest with the Plan Commission case.
Right. And that's not the case here, is it, David?
It's not always the case here.
It's going to probably not be the case here.
I mean, I'm looking at this list of what the fees include, and the only variable is the attorney's fees and staff time.
Because when we looked at that case on Sunset Road, when the applicant at one point was considering going forward, I believe she was told that, this could certainly get up to $5,000 or more. She was really led to believe that.
Well, I think the issue has to be divided into three different categories. If the commission is putting a nomination forward, there are no fees because the commission's putting it forward.
Definitely,
If someone's
definitely.
putting their own property forward,
Right.
there's probably no risk, there's no,
It should be just
there's
one
no
meeting,
fee.
probably.
So it's really only those rare cases, and whether they have been very rare in Geneva, when someone is nominating a property without owner consent. So, again, it's going to be hard to cap that because every case is going to be different. I will say, and I just said this to David, in looking at, I don't know how many ordinances I've looked at across the state of Illinois, I can't think of another ordinance that actually charges a fee to landmarks. So we are actually going above and beyond what most communities do for landmarking, because as David said, there is no economic interest in most of these.
Right.
It's for preserving community character. So I'm not sure how to address Liz's concern, but this is a very unusual clause.
Okay, then I want to just express extreme concern about this, because I think fees are appropriate here, but I think that they shouldn't be a severe deterrent, and the amount of applications that we have had are really minimal. I can only think of 2 in 30 years, and I just hate to see people being turned away in this situation. So I've been concerned about this all along. I don't want any frivolous cases coming forward. I think everybody in the audience agrees we don't want that. But nevertheless, boy, I mean, this is, not knowing what those legal costs are going to be out there. I just want to say firmly, I think this is a major concern.
Is, in the ordinance gurus, is there a cap that can be put on fees? In any instance, has that happened?
I mean, it's a fee that's determined, or a deposit requirement that will be determined by the city council from time to time. So if the council wants to put a cap on it to not have it be such a deterrent, we could, I guess, do some estimates on what a typical case might cost. And
It could be that 1,500.
recommend a cap at a certain point.
I mean, if you get through one public hearing and it moves through that, I mean, I think you could be that close to that 1,500 or less, maybe 1,000.
Yeah, I mean, for
But-
Plan Commission reviews, we have some that get a $300, refund at the end of the process, and we have others that owe us $500 additional dollars at the end of the process. It really depends upon the length of the public discussion, so.
If the applicant is coming and they're not prepared and it takes multiple public hearings because the applicant was not prepared, then it's going, it's gonna.
And I
Right,
do-
but then also, I mean, it could be used as gamesmanship if there's reasons to just extend and extend and
Right.
extend. The fees keep going up and up and up, and Liz's point is well taken, that at some point, let's just say we all reach our limit of civic duty.
But then
I'm
again,
wondering.
the applicant can pull that anytime they want. If they
Right.
feel it's getting too hot in the pocketbook, they can, I'm done.
Why should the city pick up the
Understood, yes.
tab for something that a private organization wants?
Right.
I guess that's the point, is that this isn't something the city is coming into saying, we want this. This is a private organization without owner consent coming in saying, we want this. So they should be liable for that, this is the least of their liabilities. I mean, it seems to me that the owner of the property might want to have legal representation too. And it's lucky that he doesn't turn around and look to recover that from the organization that filed it.
That's a good point.
And one thing to remember is we are asking for a pre-application meeting, not asking, requiring a pre-application meeting at this point. And one of the purposes of that pre-application meeting is for the applicant to be fully aware of how favorable or unfavorable this might be, and also gives a chance to educate a owner who may not have granted consent about the potential for positive outcome or
Just say negative.
Benefits.
right, to the benefits, thank you, that's what I was looking for, thank you, of designation. And again, having done this for 35 years, there are often times where there's an owner who's not sure they're consenting at the first knowledge of something being landmarked, but not everybody comes to the table adversarial, sometimes they just aren't informed, and so it's an educational opportunity for staff and the applicant to sit down with an applicant and talk about the benefits and the potential impact or lack of impact on a property. So I think that there are, while I understand the need for, the desire for a cap, I do think that this process does allow an applicant to consider at several stages along the way what the
Whether they should proceed or.
what the dedication is to the effort. And it does give a chance to try to bring a meeting of the minds together as well. I mean, there will always be, whether it's zoning or historic preservation or any legislation in city government, you're always going to have difference of opinions, and you may have adversarial relationships develop. But the purpose of this with the pre-application meeting is to try to assuage some of that.
So, let's say that I decide to designate Scott's house, and after $1,000, I say, you know what, I'm out. But could Carolyn come in and take over the application?
Not if you withdrew it, because once,
If you went into it together, you
But
could.
if, okay, so I'm out. Now, it does say earlier that there could be a subsequent
Amending of the,
application. So in other words, let's say, I say I'm out, and then the Historic Preservation Commission decides, oh gosh, this really is a worthwhile project after all, then they could come in and do pick up that designation, so to speak,
Correct. That
with
is
a
a
new,
possible
start the
scenario.
process again.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I make an additional comment? Then, based on what you've said over here, I do think there should be fees. I think that is appropriate. And, and I also think because this not likely to have a lot of this going forward, I think we could kind of see how this works out. And to me, I mean, you change fees from time to time, and maybe in 3 years you would assess this and say, whoa, this isn't working, we need to look at the fee part. So I don't really want to hold this up. It's been on my mind since the very beginning. I just want to put it out there that we don't want to say to an individual citizen, this is impossible. You have to be with a group, or it has to be owner consent. I mean, there might be these rare cases where it might not be. So I can accept this going forward, and I just think we keep this in mind and see how it works out.
And I would think in any ordinance revision, that you keep in mind your concerns as you're voting for it, and then come back and look at it another time,
Sure,
making an amendment to the ordinance, so to speak.
yeah,
Okay.
all right. Marty?
I don't want to shock you, but I disagree. First of all, I think it's a misnomer to call it a fee. It's cost recovery. It's not a fee. It is a cost recovery, and it is, to your point, you're recovering the cost for the city. and I think it's very appropriate to recover a cost. And the idea of an applicant saying, "Oh my God," that did happen. It happened in the Sunset debacle, and in a document I've seen in writing, the estimate at that time was $1,500 cost to the city that the city paid for. Not the applicant on Sunset, but the city paid for it, and it was cut short early. Had it continued, that $1,500 would have been quite a bit more. So it could be, several $1,000s, not just $1,500.
So you're okay with the fee language? I know that you had talked about that
No,
initially.
no, I'm not. I think that we heard testimony from the owner of Sunset. He incurred $5,000 loss, okay? And it stopped there. Had it gone over, and that was not a whole lot in legal fees, although I don't know what the breakdown was, but he had a tremendous loss in time. And it cost him $5,000. No matter how you slice it, if you ask him, he says, "Hey, it cost me $5,000. So I think an applicant should be as serious as the owner about the situation, and it should cost them some money. Now, I suggest that if you're going to landmark someone in a forced preservation situation, you should compensate that person. And better yet, the applicant should compensate them. So I'm suggesting $5,000 fee, cost recovery plus a $5,000 fee. That fee paid to the applicant, because you are impacting his owner rights. You're going to change his.
The owner, you said paid to the applicant.
No, I might have said that. Strike it from the record. The applicant should pay it to the owner, because the owner's going to have his ownership rights changed. It's going to be recorded on the county deed. It's going to be there until God knows when. But it's a serious thing to take my rights, and I consider it I consider it a loss of rights if it's done without my consent. So I'd like you to consider that. And I have I think a more creative idea when we get to districts that I hope we'll find some traction for there. I applaud you for that pre-application meeting. I think it's great. Had it happened in Sunset, maybe it did happen and happened poorly at Sunset. Sunset wouldn't have happened. And the poor woman that did all that research wouldn't have been abused. She was abused. So I applaud you for that. The language of encouraging the applicant to talk to the owner, I think is just, frivolous to put that in. You'll get the same kind of reaction you got at Sunset. And that was, she found it laughable, wasn't she asked whether or not she had talked to the applicant? It's not important. It's not important. But if she did, I'm assuming that she had no interest in sitting down with the applicant. She's been quoted as saying, "Well, I know the applicant wants to demolish the house. Why would I sit down with him?" So I don't think it's necessary. And you mentioned a few minutes ago that the pre-application was great for the owner too, because you could convince the owner. And I'm saying, terrific. Where is that in the code? There is no pre-application meeting with the owner. Now, I suggested last time that you have a pre-application warning, if you will, to the owner that somebody is looking at it. Now, if you give them a warning, you have a chance to say, "How about having a pre-application meeting with me, Mr. Owner? I'm going to tell you, it's not as bad as you think." And I think that's probably what happened on Riverbank Labs. I think that was a negotiated settlement based on that kind of reason. And if someone's going to try and force preservation on me, I would like my alderman involved. And I mentioned this last time. Why wouldn't you say, "Okay, Mr. Lambert, why wouldn't you pick up the phone and call the alderman and say, 'Hey, someone's after Marty's house. You ought to know about it. You know Marty. He's going to be up in arms over this, and he's going to fight it tooth and nail.' And the first person he's going to call maybe the second person. First person might be the lawyer, but the first practical person he's going to call is going to be the alderman. So we're suggesting in this code that we surprise the alderman. Mr. Lambert said last time he's too busy to do that, to call the owner for pre-application. Hey, you're not too busy to sit down and have a meeting, a pre-application meeting with the applicant. That shows a bias, and that's wrong. There should not be a bias in this code. It should be open and transparent communication, not just with the applicant, but with the owner. A code that encourages the applicants to contact the owner, as I said before, it's just weak language. It's frivolous to include that. And we're missing that balance of this, treat the owner at least as decently as you're treating the applicant here. You're not doing it. So far in the code, we see that the code is written to facilitate the applicant. The applicant has unlimited time to prepare. The applicant has a pre-application meeting and additional meetings before the application is processed, the follow-up meetings. And so far, we're not even talking to the owner. So again, the owner should have the early warning, and the alderman ought to be brought into it. I think we elect our aldermen to represent us, and when do we need the representation? Unfortunately, it's when something is bad is happening. It'd be nice also to have them there when something good is happening. You talked about owner education. You mentioned that. I don't see it anyplace. We described education in this room as being signs, notices, public hearings, so forth and so on. That we should have a definition of education. The CLG has a good definition of that education, and I can't describe exactly what it is word for word, but it includes making grants available for training aids and for website development, all kinds of stuff. So I like your idea about education. It's not here and it's not defined in the code, and it certainly should be. You mentioned simple majority coming out of this group. I think we deserve more respect than a simple majority. And a simple majority of a quorum is how many people? 4 people. So you're telling me, I'm reading the code and you're saying that others can apply, that I'm not going to know about it early, they're going to have meetings with you to plan it, and then if it comes to this meeting and you have a quorum, that you can pass it and recommend it. I think that's disrespectful to the homeowner. Any questions on my position? Because I know you understand the other side of it. I just hope you understand our position.
Any comments? Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public on 1066? Nope.
May I clarify a few things just for the
Yes.
for the record?
Yep.
First of all, just for the record, no action of the nomination for 944 Sunset that I'm aware of, and I was in all the meetings that I know of, was the action of a landmark ever causing a delay of any work or demolition on Sunset Road. That was not a complete application of the building division the entire time that the nomination was being discussed, and the issue was put to rest, from my understanding, by the time that the application was complete in the building division. So I just want that to be clear for the record. And then also, I would like to correct that I did not say I was too busy to deal with applicants. What I said is that with my limited hours, oftentimes the discussion has continued on before I get back into this office. And so the alderman's already been notified, not that I was too busy, but with my limited hours, I'm often behind the discussion that's already started to take place by the time I come into work the next scheduled day. If I said too busy, it was meant in the in exactly the way I'm framing it right now. I do also want to say that, I just asked David this, I don't know of any other ordinance where, in the city, where the aldermen are required to be contacted as a provision of the ordinance. So again, what we have tried to do as staff is align this ordinance with the practice and the ordinances that are being used by staff to make it consistent, not only to the public, but also to staff. So I just want to make those couple of clarifications.
We certainly do alert our aldermen to items of interest in their ward when they do come up, almost on a weekly basis.
And one last thing I did forget is that it was said that we don't, there's nothing in here providing for a notice to the owner of the property, but actually, under item 5 in the process, notice is within 5 working days of the filing of an application, whether or not deemed complete, the preservation planner shall notify in writing the owner of record of the property considered for designation as historic landmark, except when the applicant is the owner of record. So there is a provision for that.
And Michael, exactly where is that? So we can all
It is on
find it
page,
and mark it for ourselves?
page 14,
Page 14?
item 5 at the bottom of the page.
There we go, that's where it is, all right.
Got another comment, Liz?
Excuse me, Mr. Roy? I have an appointment with the Boy Scouts.
Okay.
Okay, so it's back to fees when Mr. Smirsich mentions $5,000 as a possible fee in this situation. You know, the city of Geneva, and every city that I'm aware of, has a certain, whatever it is, it's a civic either duty or tradition or whatever, to hold public hearings and listen to citizen input. And I have been to many of these meetings since, what month is this? Since January. And nobody has told anybody in the audience, you have to sit down and stop talking because we're paying our recording secretary here. And not that she costs as much as the attorney, but nevertheless, this is what we're having a free forum here. And you haven't said to me or somebody who might even talk more than me that we are taking up significant city costs on this. So I still think I'd like to see, I think it's okay what we have the language now. I'd like to see how it works out in practice. But again, I don't want this to be the one situation in the city where we have an exception, where we have a possible deterrent. I went to meetings 2 years ago where Joe Stanton and Tom Hansen from the bank there spent a considerable amount of our time with our architects at public hearings saying there was no way the Pure Oil building could be preserved or repurposed for a drive-through. We sat through hours of that. You sat through more than I did. I sat through most of it. And nobody, and the city attorney was in a lot of it as well. And no one said, we are wasting, city money here. I just see this, our good city of the Geneva, with a very good forum that we have here, the Plan Commission, as that is part of the civic process that occurs. And I don't want to make this particular thing, to have an exception here.
Just a point of, you said that the zoning ordinance is exactly the same in that if there is additional time and money spent, that the people that are applying for the zoning relief, that they have to pay that also. Is that parallel language in the zoning ordinance and it is to this?
Yes, with Plan Commission cases, if they exceed the initial deposit, they are invoiced for any additional costs.
So this isn't exceptional at all?
This would not be, no.
Okay.
It would be if it was $5,000.
Well, as it's written right now.
No, I was saying I go with what's written right
Right.
now.
Right.
I do not want to see it moved beyond that.
Marty?
Again, for the record, I appreciate that 5-day notice. I have it underlined. I know exactly where it is, and I have great appreciation for it. We were talking about pre-application. We were talking about before the application is received, you're talking to the applicant, but you're not talking to the owner, and you're not talking to the alderman. So I'm not talking about the 5 days. I think that's great. And I think that 5 days very appropriate. And so
For something sooner.
don't misquote me by thinking that 5 days' notice is covering my concern. It doesn't come anywhere near it.
Okay.
I actually have a question about the notice section, would it be appropriate to follow up with a phone call or something in case they don't get the letter, or you don't hear from them, or if you don't hear from them in a certain amount of time to follow up, just to make sure that that the owner of record understands what's happening?
Like a certified letter, maybe?
Yeah, or maybe even a certified letter. I think that would be appropriate. Is that an additional
So the letter doesn't get cost.
So, it might get lost. Somebody might
And then
just
they
throw it
might
on
never
their
know.
counter and not open it for 3 days because they have an 18-month-old they're chasing around.
It could certainly be a certified letter.
Yeah.
Once the application is filed, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That initial
yeah.
5-day
Yeah.
notice?
Just to make sure that they get it. I mean, chances are they're going to get it, but
So then.
Your point
the
is well taken.
preservation- The
I think
preservation.
it's a good idea.
I think it's actually in the filing that it is certified, of
costs.
return
and-
receipt, certified mail.
Okay.
So it's in there?
Not for the notice, I think that Jen is speaking of, it says it required, but we can certainly put in that it's required to be in writing and by certified mail. That's easy enough to do.
Okay. We have some other hands up here?
I'd agree with that one.
Chris Bordage, 40 South Lincoln. I guess the elephant in the room here is you can avoid all of this by just having owner consent at the time the application is filed. And I know that I expressed that before in prior meetings, but you would limit the applicant fees. They wouldn't have any legal fees because you have a consenting owner that would be on board with this whole thing.
Yeah, that-
So I guess I don't understand the avoidance of requiring owner consent at the time the application is filed. And I think Marty's suggestion of having the owner present at the pre-application meeting is a great idea, because you're right, that's a perfect opportunity. If they're against it, like Riverbank Labs, that's a perfect opportunity for you to educate them, to say, hey, this is a wonderful thing to have happen, and perhaps it would be a harmonious thing from then on, and you wouldn't have to worry about escalating fees or cost recoveries or anything as such. So I would urge you to put owner consent at the time the application is filed, because it seems like that would circumvent everything.
Well, that would be great for the applications of somebody not the commission. But, I mean, especially with like Riverbank's Lab, the commission was the one that filed the application. Am I right on that one, or was it somebody else?
That was not, the commission did file
It
it.
was the commission? So in other words, these fees would only apply to somebody who's not the commission.
Okay. I guess I have to think about how you'd get around something like that, but it seemed like that worked out for the best, because the owner then came around. But there was the meetings that had to educate him that would be key and an important part of putting in there as well.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Chatty Cathy, I'm sorry. That was not what happened at Riverbank at all, okay? It was a very contentious situation. The city preservation planner, Doug, who preceded Carla and Michael, and the commission wanted to landmark Riverbank. The three men on the board of the Fabian Foundation were very, very opposed. The commission here, I don't think any of you were on it. Al, were you on it at that time? I don't think so. Sharon Jones and Vince Cleese and some others. And so they voted to go along with the designation, and the city council had a hearing to, the men on the commission said, we won't accept that in any way. And so they went to city council, and city council, there was a lot of public input at that point on many sides. I mean, it was a full, good review. But the upshot was that immediately after the city council refused to overturn commission, then some owners came in from Naperville. And I don't know if it was just by chance or anything, but that was the situation that happened. It wasn't a pre-application meeting.
All right. We got to start wrapping this up, but if you got something else to add.
Well, can I say something?
Yeah.
I think we need to point out that the situation with a hostile owner probably would be extremely rare. In my conversations with the 15 communities that I talked with, it only had happened one time in the past 30 years, and this was in 15 communities. I think there needs to be some trust here, that we need to realize that those of us who are on the commission, those are the people in City Hall, we're not out to get the homeowner. We're not out to, and I think someone said a little while ago, the owner needs to be notified that somebody's out to get their house. Well, that sounds like highway robbery, and in my point of view, that's not what historic preservation is all about.
Good point, Carolyn.
Okay, Marty?
Can Colin speak next?
I made that comment, and I agree with what you said. That shouldn't be what historic preservation is all about, and it should not be forced, and it should not be predatory and all that other language. And I was glad to see the definition for owner consent included in this draft, and it says the act of the result of reaching consensus and agreement through reason and deliberation by the owner of the real estate and so forth and so on. The implication here is that reason and agreement makes sense, and I think it makes more sense than force, for sure. And the reason I think that agreement makes so much sense is it builds a positive platform around preservation. Now you're going to your alderman and saying, we've got something that the community wants, that this owner wants, this is something positive, this is something you can do for the community by granting this. This code refers to dissent. I think he changed that word. It did refer to dissent. I think it says opposition now. Dissent means that you have to disagree, and you have to gather. You're asking 51% dissent, so you have to gather others based on disagreement, based on anger, and based on, hey, you're trying to do something with me. And that's where you come up with that inflammatory language of forced preservation, what are you doing to me? Now you go to the alderman and you say, we've got a group that doesn't want this. This is a negative thing that you're doing to the city. There's a big difference. And I've harped on education before. I haven't seen any. I have seen some education. I saw some good education on the coyote issue. They've got slides, they've got seminars, they've got websites, they've got a repeat of their presentation on the web. And what do we get from the historic preservation plan? Well, we get signs and we get notices. And there's a big difference. Signs and notices are legal cover. Education is much different. If you had education, you'd have the kind of consent that Carolyn is talking about. You can get...
Marty, the business about the coyote situation, that all happened after the city council voted for it.
Yeah.
So maybe after city council has a chance to look at this ordinance, maybe people in the audience can come forward and say, can you put together an education plan, just like from the coyote situation?
I'll do that.
That would be a great thing.
I intend to do that. I'd love to see Michael do it. Say, hey, we want to do preservation, and here's a way we want to do it. I'd like to see you guys take the initiative to have a positive approach around preservation, make it something you're going to do for me and not something you're going to do against me.
Okay.
I would say that education is a priority. We have to get through this document so I can have my time to pursue the education.
Colin.
It's a priority that's not been addressed.
Colin Campbell, 18 South 6th Street. Through the course of the hearings on the proposed revisions, we have heard an awful lot about the rights of the owner, and I don't remember one word about the rights of the community. We live in a community. That is not a bunch of individuals who just go off and do anything they want to do. The right of the city to restrict what property owners do is well established. I can't move next door to Marty and put in a 24-hour biker bar and bowling alley. We have zoning regulations. We have building codes. And every survey that has been done about what is important to the community of Geneva in the last 20 years, historic preservation has been in the top 3. So we talk about the issue that has brought this to the fore, the house built on Sunset. The community, the people who lived in that neighborhood, we can presume most of them moved there for the ambience of the neighborhood. When a perfectly good house, which was a historic home, not in a historic district, but a perfectly good house, was torn down and replaced by what, in my own non-architectural opinion, looks like a mausoleum, I can understand that they would be upset. And they have some rights too. So the purpose of a city government is to mediate those disputes. And the city government needs the ability to do that. And this ordinance gives the city government, our elected representatives, the ability to mediate any dispute that comes up over should a historic property be demolished or changed or not when it's outside of the historic district. And the city is giving in this ordinance the individual owner lots of layers of protection. Your consideration, the city council's consideration, a supermajority in the city council, fees to the applicant. There are plenty of protection. And I think it should stand just as you've written it.
Thank you. All right, any other? All right.
Sandra Ellis, 209 Peyton Street. I'm relatively new to this issue, but I have watched the videos from afar. I've been out of town. But I want to say this revision that's been in process for 2 years should have resolved a problem. I see a lot of edits, a lot of clarification with definitions, but the underlying problem here is owner consent. If you took out the word without throughout this document, you wouldn't be having these long meetings. And yes, I agree that this commission, that people in this community should not be put in a predator capacity where they can landmark someone else's house or the commission can designate a historic district without owner consent. I believe I heard someone say that this has not really been abused significantly here, but there have been 2 abuses in the last 4 years. We've had the sunset issue, which was an abuse of that owner's right, and we've also had the intended designation of a historic district that failed once people were aware of it. Those were without owner consent. Yeah, you're shaking your head no, not correct?
No, it was a study. You're wrong. It was a study that they were proposing. It
And
was
did
not
the owners in the area know
Into the
about it?
process.
Yeah, it never started.
Yeah, it didn't even begin.
It never began?
Nope.
Why was there a petition with 100 signatures asking,
I don't know, they didn't want the study, I guess.
the city didn't want to
It
study?
was an administrative study that was done,
Uh-huh.
which is something that people at City Hall frequently do studies
Yes.
of problems. And
It was a proposed
it was
study.
a proposed study, that's all.
And it was never proposed that there be a historic district?
Nope.
It was a study
Okay,
to see
then-
if,
To see if the area could qualify, yes.
Right.
Okay,
Which
then I am
is a
corrected
standard-
on that.
A standard sort of city government operation.
There were 2 petitions presented in the last 4 years from homeowners, am I correct?
That I wouldn't know.
I
Never
don't
saw
live
them.
in that.
No? Marty, you're aware of 2 petitions?
4 petitions presented.
for a total of 354 people.
Why would this commission not know about those petitions?
They didn't come to us.
Really? This is,
Lambert certainly had access to them.
this is homeowner input about issues relating to this, and this commission isn't aware of them?
The petitions weren't tied to anything that we were doing.
Wow.
Owner consent.
So my understanding is none of you knew about these petitions?
I am
Are there-
aware of them. I've been aware of them since the day I was hired here. Have I seen them? No. I'm aware that there were petitions out there. I do not know what they say. I do not know how they were circulated. I do not know what the terms of the petitions were. But I do know, I've heard since I was hired here, that there are petitions that have been submitted concerning some of these issues. I
Wow.
have not seen them.
That's a major link in communication here.
Well,
Owner consent is a big issue. And it seems to me that we should be resolving issues with this ordinance. It's 20 years old, and it's going to go forward maybe another 20 years. Why are we avoiding the underlying issue of owner consent?
I don't believe
We're creating more problems.
I think we're addressing
We're
it,
addressing it.
which had not been
It's not,
addressed.
it hasn't changed.
Right, it's not, we're not taking it away. So in other
You are
words-
allowing people to still landmark a home that, without the consent of an owner.
That is what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And
it
that's
says.
what the ordinance had and what you're continuing to
I
recommend.
think it's a good idea.
That's what I'm startled about.
Scott, may I address that a little bit?
Sure.
I am concerned about hearing the continual discussion about predatory neighbors. That does worry me. The idea, and we talked about this quite a while ago, if you look across ordinances that have this as part of their preservation toolbox, the most effective use of it and the time it has been used, the majority of times in all of the ordinances that I'm aware of in Illinois that I've looked at, is in the case of absentee landlords or non-invested parties in a community. I don't know if there's any legislation that can legislate how resident neighbors treat one another. I think that's a futile exercise to try to do that. But what a community does want to do is protect its character from people who are not invested in the community. And in this day and age, where there are absentee investors and absentee landlords in most communities, that this is a very essential tool to have in the toolbox. Again, if neighbors want to use this as a vindictive tool against one another, I'm not sure how you legislate that. But you do not want to leave yourself exposed, I do not believe, in the case of somebody who does not have any interest in the community except for the highest return on an investment, regardless of historic character or what have you. And it's been said here, since I've been coming here 30-some years, that Geneva's built its reputation on the architectural and historical character of its community. And what you don't want to do is leave yourself exposed without a tool that you may have to use in certain circumstances. I don't think there's many ordinances, whether it's historic preservation or other ordinances, who don't try to account for those cases or those times when you may need to have some kind of tool available to offset something that may not be in the best interest of the community. And this is not written about pitting neighbor against neighbor. If that's how it's being used, we can't legislate that, I don't believe. I don't think there's any legislation you can do. But if you want to be sure that you have a tool to protect the community from disinterested parties, that is the reason to keep the language the way it is.
It doesn't sound like that really pertained to the Sunset Street issue at all. It wasn't a vindictive neighbor, but what was done to that gentleman was wrong. I don't know if it was a monstrosity. I guess that can be a judgmental thing, but when we lose our rights to our property and what we want to do with it, and it's not about the highest return on your investment. It's about maybe not necessarily wanting to follow and have to go through a committee when you make changes to the outside of your home. It's as simple as that. Okay, well, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Right, can we get on to the next section?
Well, I'll just say one last thing.
Okay.
We just need to also keep in mind that city council has the last say in these kinds of situations. So let's say, for example, in the very rare situation that a house comes before us to be landmarked and the owner is not consenting, and we agree, then it goes to city council, and city council makes that final decision. So we have that last, that last provision for the owner's protection.
All right, the next section is 1067, historic district designation. And hopefully, we've exhausted the conversation on it for a specific landmark. Because most of the language is the same, isn't it?
The language that you see here has been changed to be parallel to the historic landmarking. So what I would like to do, with the commission's permission, is to identify those areas where it differs.
Sure.
So I would direct your attention to page 20, beginning on page 21, under 10, withdrawal by owner objection. The language now has been revised to read, in the case of an application for historic district designation for a specified geographic area where at least 51% of all owners of record of the land included within the boundaries of the proposed historic district declare their opposition to the proposed historic district in writing on forms provided by the Community Development Department, and such forms are filed with the city clerk not later than 30 days following the final adjournment of the public hearing. The application for historic district designation shall be deemed withdrawn and no such district may be created. If you remember, we had quite a lengthy process, and that was questioned by the commissioners. We've reduced it down to this process, which I think addressed all of the questions that were raised.
So it's not just a standard petition, you have to get stuff from the city to get people to sign that.
Yes, with a zoning legal protest, there's a form you fill out, you have notarized, and you submit it with the city clerk, and that way you can verify that it is the adjoining owners or the owners within the district that are signing the petition.
Okay. All right, is that the only change, or is that the only difference?
That's through paragraph 10.
Okay.
Paragraph 11, again, the commission action, it allows, we've clarified the language to allow for the commission to take statements presented by owners of record of the land included within the boundaries of the proposed historic district. We have also then set a calendar timeframe at the end of that paragraph, or that section. Within 45 calendar days following the final adjournment of the public hearing, the commission shall make written findings of fact and shall submit same together as a recommendation. Similar to historic landmark, if we fail to do that, then the proposed designation is deemed to have been denied.
That's the same as the landmark.
Correct. Section 12, again, mirrors the landmark discussion. And Section 14 has been revised to mirror that same process as in the landmark discussion. And again, item 15 is just a correction of grammar. Under the standards for historic district designation, the only modification is under paragraph 2. And again, it's a clarification of language that says nevertheless contribute to the overall visual characters which have been identified as significant. So we're actually referring back to the survey of what, or the survey that's been done previously, or the survey that would be done to identify what is significant about that particular district. Is it because of certain house forms, is it because of certain land forms, certain development patterns? We're referring it back to the nomination to make the judgment for designation.
Any comments from the commission? Any from the public that wasn't included in the landmark? All right.
I'm not going to beat it to death, but the 51% still is negative. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
I said I had a little different view on cost recovery here and fees. Again, I think you ought to have cost recovery. The fees, I think, should be $500 per unit in a district. That's a lot of money. Now, what would you do with it? You wouldn't be paying, I'm not suggesting that you pay it to the owner, I'm suggesting you pay it into a fund to be administered by this organization for education of the community on historic preservation. So if there is an outside group that wants a whole new district, let them pay and take their money and put it into a fund and educate that district or other districts on why they should be landmarked or made a historic district. And my remarks made under designating an individual house is the same for the district.
Okay.
In the interest of time.
Anyone else has something new? All right, let's go to 1068.
1068 is neighborhood conservation districts. This is a section we did not review last time. We did not get to this. Neighborhood conservation districts are a concept that is used across the country. It has not been applied in too many communities in Illinois. Oak Park, Urbana, Peoria have utilized conservation districts, but conservation districts are used fairly widely from North Carolina to Washington State, Minnesota, Texas, Tennessee. Other states have used them as well. The concept of neighborhood conservation districts, why it's being even recommended for the inclusion in the ordinance is it was a issue that first came out of the Durant study that was done for what they called the Northwest Edition in 2002. Their recommendation was that the district had a certain identifiable quality to it, basically worker housing surrounding industrial concerns. However, there had been numerous changes, significant changes over time, primarily synthetic siding, heavy use of synthetic siding, that would not have allowed that area to meet the National Register district criteria. The concern with that is a certified local government, buildings within a National Register district, or National Register qualified district that meets those standards, even if they're not listed in the National Register, qualify for the tax assessment freeze program. If it does not meet those standards, it does not, those properties necessarily do not qualify for the tax assessment freeze program. So it was recommended in 2002, but there was no mechanism to even adopt a neighborhood conservation district because it didn't exist in our ordinance. So this would also apply to, we had an inquiry last, I believe it was last year, on the east side of the Fox River with an area that did not meet, the strict standards of a National Register district, but did have a sense of quality and a sense of space and time that could have qualified as a neighborhood conservation district. How neighborhood conservation districts are typically reviewed is it's a much less restrictive review process. It's handled mostly administrative, and the opportunity goes back to the discussion about opportunities for educational interface. And while a lot of the individual elements are not held to the high standard that would be in a historic district, such as windows or the allowance of synthetic siding, it does give an opportunity for a discussion to occur between interested property owners to maybe rehabilitate their properties in a more sensitive way, not required, but encouraged to be a more sensitive rehabilitation, so that the area could be rehabilitated, maybe could become a historic district, so future property owners could take advantage of some of the incentives that are available. It is, some people call it historic preservation light because it's not as restrictive and not as element oriented. But its attempt is to try to preserve an area. What's interesting in Geneva is that many of the zoning practices that have been put in place in the last 10 years are really following the same ideas of neighborhood conservation districts. So we have the tear down infill regulations, we have mass requirements, we have the zoning compatibility worksheet that we use to look at lot coverage and building mass and what have you. So in practice, the city of Geneva has actually already moved forward into this concept. We just don't have an actually defined process to continue that and to actually have an educational opportunity for trying to encourage rehabilitation of neighbors that might not meet National Register criteria. So with that said, The next two sections in the ordinance deal with define of neighborhood conservation districts, the designation process, and the review process. It, again, mirrors the historic districting process as far as the technical process, but
is there anything that's different?
I was going to point out two things. We do allow for conservation districts to have properties less than 30 years old as part of the qualifications. And then if you go back to section B on page 31, we lay out six standards for designation of neighborhood conservation districts, of which four must be met, any four of those six must be met. So those are a different standard for designation than for historic district. Historic district is much more restrictive and have to meet all of the requirements. So again, these are areas that of the city that may be endangered either by threatened with natural or intentional demolition on a large scale. It could be areas that are struggling to be stabilized. Maybe they're adjacent to, a major roadway such as 38 or 31, something like that, but are not, again, at the same level as a National Register district.
There are no tax advantages for these people in a conservation district? Is that what I
Correct.
understood?
Correct.
Other comments from the commission? This takes us through 10.6.9, right? Any other questions or comments from the public? Okay.
10.6.9, 10.6.10.
Yeah, 10.6.10 is construction plan review, that's the next.
Mr. Lambert, did you mean to say less than 30 years? I think you meant to say it has to be a minimum of 30 years. Is that correct?
Buildings that are 30 years or older.
Or older, right. And most of the stuff that you're talking about is handled in other codes in the city through practice and what's in place now. It seems to me that you're expanding the reach of not just this commission, which doesn't bother me so much, but you're expanding the responsibility of the part-time planner who is stretched to an absolute limit now. You're identifying, well, I know of two areas that have been identified already for a conservation district. Now, I don't know where you find the time to administer all these regulations for the district. And as I see it, it's kind of a high school before you get to the college of a historic district. And that's in preparing the district to be a historic district. I just think it is really a expansion of responsibility that I don't see a need for.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
Chris Bordage, 40 South Lincoln. I just want to concur with Marty that I do think this is an overreach of the commission. I think the standards for designated a neighborhood as conservation district are extremely easy to pass. And this concerns me the most because I have a feeling that my area would be targeted for this, and it would be a very simple process. I mean, 4 out of these 6, located within the corporate boundaries of the city, and you could pretty much preserve every nook and cranny of Geneva with this section here, and my wish would be that it wouldn't be in the ordinance at all, because I don't see where this would even be a beneficial thing for Geneva. I guess I'm missing the benefits of this. If there's no tax benefits to the owners, what exactly are the benefits?
So was there anything in addition to what Marty said that you wanted to add?
Other than I urge that this section is not in here, I guess no, there's nothing in addition.
All right. Thanks. Anyone else? All right, let's go to 10.6.10, construction plan review.
Tank 610 under construction plan review has not changed
We
from.
didn't really have any comments on that, did we?
No, the only comment again was on page 34.
Page 33, that you just added some item C.
And also on 32, neighborhood conservation district added.
Again, using the same language. The historic images of proposed work, we can't demand historic images if they don't exist or nobody's aware of any, so it just says if any are available. Under item 5 on page 34, we just, again, used language to define those buildings that are contributing significantly, and that's not copying, but mirroring the same language that's in a historic district. So again, we tried to make these very parallel from one section to the next.
Item 11.
Item 11 is the next change, and again, it's requiring a final inspection, which we were required in the other sections as well, that the building official and/or building inspectors in consultation with the preservation plan shall complete prior to issuance of a final occupancy permit an inspection of any work approved under certificate of appropriateness to assure compliance with the approvals granted by the commissioner or on its behalf. That again addressed the concern about how are we making sure that this work is being completed per the direction of the commission.
Okay. Any questions on that section from the public? All right, how about 10.6.11?
10.6.11 is no changes, and it addresses the idea of ordinary maintenance repair, that we're not prohibiting people from maintaining their buildings.
10.6.12?
10.6.12 is a demolition of designated properties. This is a new section. We did review it. And again, the changes are in green are identified or are coming from the commission's comments. So we've identified in the first section demolition of more than 25% of any exterior street facade or more than 25% of the exterior envelope of a historic landmark or a property within a designated historic district or a contributing or significant property within a neighborhood conservation district. Again, mirroring the language there. The procedure for historic landmarks and historic districts is just a simple retitling of the section to be consistent. The request was made under, the rest are again parallel to the other sections. Item G was a request to identify that's an Illinois registered architect. And then section 5 deals again with identifying calendar days versus working days, and also the location of the sign in the public right-of-way adjacent to the property based on some concerns about signs being put on private property by the city. And then, again, continuing the outlining of calendar days versus working days throughout the rest of the document. Then we have in item 10 under section on page 41, that we do have an appeal of a demolition denial to the city council. So if this commission were to deny a demolition, it would go to the city council, and we outlined that process. Section B is a new section. Oh, I'm sorry, let me go back up. In section A12, site restoration, again, this was a concern raised by the commission that we have something in there about site restoration, and we're saying it must comply with city code. And then we have the lapse of demolition approval, that any approval this commission gives would be for a period of 12 months, so that we do know that work is progressing per the direction of this commission.
And then B is the same language for conservation district?
It is the same language, again, mirroring it. It has minor differences, basically just, again, recognize the neighborhood conservation district is not as restrictive as a historic district.
So any questions from the commission on this?
Is there any way to put anything in there to, and maybe, you know, to do a survey of the building before it's demolished, if it's a significant building? Or is that something that we should do at case-by-case basis?
Yeah, we've requested that before, but we've never required it.
If you would like to have it required, we could look into language with it. I guess the question is going to be as to who is paying for that survey, and I would think you'd want to identify what elements need to be in that survey. Are we looking for measured floor plans, measured elevations? Are we looking for details of significant architectural features?
I think there's language, there's standards out there that could be cited, that would meet that could be easily,
But
Well, it depends
I wonder if that might be a redundancy, because the Geneva History Museum has assumed that responsibility in the last several years.
I think the last time I remember that requesting that was, I think there were 2 Sears houses where Dotson Place is. They were on 3rd Street. And Shodine was going to tear those down, and we asked them to document it. So they hired an architect. There wasn't really, the definition was really loose, but they hired an architect who did measurements and drawings, and then they provided that to History Center.
The only standard that I know of, and I might be wrong, Michael, you know way more than I do, would be like a HAB survey, where they lay out what is involved.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. I actually did the survey on those buildings.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Okay.
so that was a number of years ago when I worked with
You're
Mike
an
Dixon.
architect.
And again, there are commissions that have their level of documentation is literally black and white photographs of the exterior and any critical features, and that's their documentation. Even though there's the HAB standards out there, I don't know if that's the standard you want to use or something lesser. It doesn't matter to me. I just would like directions to how, HABs is recognized, but it's also very intensive.
Yeah, it's expensive too. I mean,
Yeah,
if you're
well,
having
it
a
takes some
professional
time to do it, yeah.
It seems to me that there should be some sort of middle ground where we lay out that exactly what is required. A floor plan, elevations, that sort of thing, just so that our heritage can be preserved for the future without getting into the full-scale HABs.
I would agree with that. I mean, you could say site plan, floor plans of each level and elevations of, the major elevations. And then photographic evidence, or photographic.
And I would even say that, photographic renditions of the elevations, if they're available, sometimes you just can't get far enough back.
Yeah.
But, I mean, just a brief list of what we consider the minimum.
So you're not seeking rectified photographs, you're just seeking a standard black and white photograph would be acceptable.
Just if someone builds another building on that site and they want to look at the history of that site, they've got some resources to pull from.
Right, or perhaps there's a study being done in the city, or, I mean, I can think of a multitude of reasons why you would want to have basic information of what was there.
Typically, what many of these drawings require is also including documentation of critical architectural features, and that may be something that you'd want to include. So if it's an Italianate with a very specific type of bracket at the eave, you'd want that photographed, I'm assuming, is the least, the minimum?
Yeah, I would say
Okay.
Oh, and scale drawings too,
yeah, definitely to scale.
not just a napkin sketch.
Yeah, not the things we saw for 6th Street School.
So I would say probably, like an aerial view of the site, something like you could get off of Google, photographs of the exterior.
Is there some language in some of these ordinances that you have, Michael?
There is. I guess
That's a good idea.
the one thing I would like to just get some direction on is, if I say critical features as identified by the commission, because I think that would then allow for some discussion to occur with,
Yeah.
to make sure you're getting what you want and giving some direction back to a demolition contractor or whomever. Okay. Okay. I have enough direction on that, I
Did
think.
you get what you need?
I think so. I'll
Okay.
pull some language and add that in.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody on the commission has dealt with demolition before, but when you do a demolition, do you need a set of floor plans to do the demo?
think so.
Not typically?
It depends. It depends on where they're
So
at.
I was just wondering if it was something that would already be done.
No, it wouldn't be done to the level that you would look for that.
Well, what was the level of documentation that was done for the historic district nomination? Was it just for each building?
For the district here, in 1982 and 84, it was literally address by address with a description of the building as a per style, Italian Age Greek Revival, and an approximate construction date. That was the extent of, there were no
Oh, okay.
drawings submitted, and then there was, in 1982 and 1984, you only had to submit sample photographs of the
Oh.
district. You have to do a full nomination for the National Register for the landmark, because there has to be one landmark at least nominated in a district, but then they just did samples. Now you have to provide photographs of every building.
Everything, right, yeah, okay.
Because you have to stay in the public right of way.
Yeah.
Typically for that, so you can't measure the buildings, you can't see the sides and
Okay.
that type of thing. All right, any questions from the public on demolition? Marty? Are you gonna tell us that we shouldn't demolish any buildings?
Pardon me?
Are you gonna tell us we shouldn't demolish any buildings?
No, not at all. Not at all. As a matter of fact, sitting here at the last meeting, I took note of comments that came from Liz's camp about demolition, and I can tell you, we can find common ground there. I'm not against you preventing demolition of a treasure and all that kind of stuff. Isn't demolition handled elsewhere in city code?
It is.
Okay, and is this a duplicate effort? It seems to me to be kind of filling in the weak spots that may be in the city code. So I think that demolition should be a public hearing on its own. I'd like to see this commission do two things. Take it out for the time being, table it, if you will, to bring it back at another time, ask the city to have a public hearing on demolition code, period. Once that demolition code is in place and it fits the needs of the city, then the historic commission can come in and say, okay, here's how we're going to look at the code, and here's how we're going to enforce the preservation code.
I think this, as it's written, is just what you said.
Pardon me?
I think the way this is written is, that's already happened.
The demolition code has been rewritten in the city?
Yeah,
I thought it
pretty
was
much you
badly
just-
out of date.
Just get a permit.
Well, tear
Pardon?
down infill?
Pardon?
The tear down infill, isn't that dealing?
Outside of the district, it's pretty much just
Yeah.
getting a permit for it.
Yeah.
Right.
We're asking.
Yeah, wait a
for
minute,
little
pretty
bit
much
more
getting a permit for it, and I heard a lot of comments that it's got to be more than that. There's got to be some
Outside the
criteria.
district, it's just getting a permit.
Yeah.
We're
So-
asking for more
We're
in
asking
the historic district.
Yeah, but I think, and I appreciate that, and I think you
In the
should.
process that you're saying, that's already happened, and this is the
Yeah, but-
result of that.
Is there part of the plan, David, to look at demolition citywide at the code? It
There's
isn't.
not currently a
So
plan
you're
to-
satisfied with the code the way it is for my neighborhood, which is not under the control of this commission? And the objections that I heard last time were about neighborhoods like mine with the infill and so forth. And that might be worth looking at. So this is not a duplication, this is just a fill-in because there's nothing there.
Oh, it's an overlay of,
Well, and this is coming out of also a couple of things. One is the current demolition process identified under the building ordinance is strictly a mechanical approach to demolition. What happens when you apply for a demolition permit, how you protect the site, how you keep it watered, et cetera, et cetera. There's no evaluation process in the demolition process under the building ordinance. The other thing is that one of the things that's been identified by the Illinois Historic Preservation Agency as a weakness in our ordinance is we do not have any provision or any direction in our ordinance to identify how buildings may or may not be demolished within the district. That is a identified weakness in our ordinance. It wasn't commonly done in 1995 or 1987 when the ordinance was written, but since then, demolition is often a a portion of historic preservation ordinance, because it's, again, part of that due process. If you're telling somebody they can landmark it, how do they get rid of it? We have a de-landmarking process, we have a demolition process. The other aspect to be aware of is that many preservation ordinances make a provision for a demolition delay ordinance that's citywide. I did not choose to bring that recommendation forward. I chose to limit it to the historic district. If the city would like to further through the zoning board or the plan commission to look at a citywide demolition ordinance, I think that's beyond the purview of this commission, but it could certainly be dovetailed into what we've written here and not be a duplication of effort. When I was discussing this with Dick Unchin and as David's predecessor, we made the decision that we did not think that we should be looking at a community-wide demolition delay. The purpose of a community-wide demolition delay is there are things outside the historic district that probably have historic value. But that is not the way the Geneva ordinance is written or set up. It's based on districts and individual landmarks and not looking at it in a blanket process like many communities would look at it. So we were trying to respect, again, the Geneva tradition of looking at landmarked properties or properties within a designated district.
So this is written to cover the district or
Correct.
the designated area.
Yeah.
Correct.
Or a landmarked.
Or a landmark. Okay. It came about pretty quick between the two meetings of this commission, so I was just wondering how much detail was put into it and whether or not it should be acted on now or it should be given more time to be reviewed. I would think it should be given more time to be reviewed, but that's your call.
Okay, thank you. Was anyone else from the public on demolition? All right, 10-6-13.
Just for clarification, the demolition was in earlier drafts. We've just never gotten to reviewing it publicly, but it's been in the earlier drafts.
I thought we reviewed it the first time around.
Yeah, we got through the whole.
Always
whole
the
thing.
intention
We just didn't.
to include this,
Yeah, that
because
was-
that was a problem with the ordinance.
Yeah, that was 2 months ago. Yes.
So 10-6-13, subdivision planning and zoning review.
Again, that's not changed. Again, that's mirroring the language that we have, and that's just basically saying that we are, following the zoning board with subdivisions, plan unit developments.
10-6-14.
10-6-14 is a new section, again, another identified weakness of our current ordinance. We don't have a provision for somebody who may not be able to afford the preservation to the Secretary of Interior standards on a property that's been designated, whether it's in the historic district or an individual landmark. So this sets out now a process for economic hardship, and I will point out that the language here is the tested language of the Illinois Supreme Court. So the information that is provided here is what the Illinois Supreme Court has said is the documentation that needs to be provided in order for a commission such as ours to make a determination of whether someone is truly suffering economic hardship.
Okay, the last one is, I think this is the last one, 10-6-15.
10-6-15 has not changed its violations and penalty, and what it basically identifies, if anybody violates any provision of this ordinance, it's an offense per day. In Illinois, that's set by the courts as to what that offense per day is typically, not set by us or by the city council. That would be through a legal process and a judgment.
Okay, any comments on those last two sections? All right, so what is the next step, Michael? What?
The next step is that this is currently being reviewed by the city attorney, and so what I would like to do is, with your permission, is to make these revisions that have been discussed tonight by the commission, and if there's any further direction, I would need to know that, and then bring this back to our May 19th meeting for a final review, and also for you to review any comments from the city attorney, and then we'd be seeking some kind of direction or recommendation to take to the city council.
Okay. So, for tonight, what should we do? I think we've all had a chance to speak, we've put our input in.
I've taken notes, I know David was taking notes as well, so I believe between David and I think we've heard, we've got the.
Make a motion to continue this then?
yes, you would want to make a motion to continue this to the May 19th, this action to the May 19th meeting.
Okay. Can I get a motion to continue this item of the agenda to the May 19th meeting?
I'll second it.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so May 19th, be prepared to vote. All right, so the next item on the agenda is Secretary's report.
Very briefly, I just wanted to bring to the commission's attention two things. National Preservation Month, Al has begun putting the posters together for the walking tour. There is no national theme this year. I know that's been asked, nobody could find it, and the National Trust confirmed they have not named a theme.
They're busy too.
Too. But then the other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is that you may have all seen the article in the Daily Herald about the Sixth Street School, that it is now with the Illinois Historic Preservation Agency. And the Illinois Historic Preservation Agency has made a finding and reported back to Kane County. And I'll just read it, it's very brief. It says, it was addressed to Mr. Tim Weber at Cordigan Clark and Associates. It says, "Dear Mr. Weber, thank you for requesting comments from our office concerning the possible effects of your project on cultural resources. Our comments are required by Section 4, Paragraph 133C21 of the Illinois State Agency Historic Resources Preservation Act. We have reviewed the documentation provided, and in our opinion, the Sixth Street School is eligible for inclusion on the National Register of Historic Places pursuant to Criterion A for its long association with and influence on the community, and for Criterion C because it is a good example of 20th century school design. The proposal to demolish the school constitutes an adverse effect as defined in the aforementioned act. Alternatives to be analyzed should include, but are not limited to, mothballing, incorporating into proposed development, selling to others. Please note, several citizens from Geneva have contacted this agency to express their opinion that the building should be saved and repurposed. No demolition should take place prior to the resolution of the disposition of this historic property." And it's forwarded by David Halpin, who is the Cultural Resources Manager at IHPA.
Okay.
So the process continues.
Do we know what that means?
What does this mean?
Yeah.
It means it's back into Kane County's hand to make a stronger case for demolition. They can appeal it for
Then they do that to the state, they don't come through the city anymore.
Correct. The commission has acted here, the city council has acted. It's now between the state and the county.
Okay.
And if they don't, if their appeal, if IHPA doesn't agree with their appeal, then it doesn't get demolished?
What would happen is IHPA would enter into a negotiated process with Kane County trying to promote one of these three alternatives or a fourth or fifth alternative that may come to light because of the additional information that's provided. It could range from anything from, trying to make any one of these happen to requiring, allowing demolition pursuant to HABs drawings being created. And they would be looking at the full HABs drawings probably to document the building.
Does the county has already voted on this? Is it up to the chairman of the county board to just take this to the state then, or is it go back to the county with, do they have a meeting about, do you know any of the process at that point?
I wouldn't speak for the county process. We don't represent them, so I don't know how they want to handle that. But they could take it many different directions, I would think, to respond back to the Illinois Historic Preservation Agency.
Okay.
And that is all I have.
All right. Next item is new business. First from the commission. Anyone have any new business?
I have new business.
Okay.
Is now a good time?
This is your opportunity.
Okay, this is a letter or email that I sent to Mayor Burns and Chairman Roy this afternoon, and I copied Michael on it. I'm just going to read it aloud for the commission. Mayor Burns and Chairman Roy, as you know, I have planned for some time to resign my position on the City of Geneva's Historic Preservation Commission. I had hoped to finish out my term, which I thought would be in May of this year, and simply not renew. However, I have recently learned that in fact I have one more year to go on my appointment, which would take us to May 2016. Nevertheless, I find that the time demands of my business are in conflict with the requirements of the commission. Therefore, I regretfully must follow my original intent and resign now, effective May 31st, 2015, as planned, as opposed to waiting until 2016. I have thoroughly enjoyed sitting on the HBC. It has changed quite a bit from when I started in 2003. At that time, we sat around a table and applicants told us about their projects. Today, we are recorded and videoed, and the dais separates us from the presenters. Back then, we received packets full of full-scale drawings to pore over, and today everything is submitted electronically. In 2003, Dick Unch fulfilled the role of HPC staff in addition to his other duties. Today, we have the knowledge and expertise of a dedicated historic preservation planner. Despite these changes, I feel that resolution and purpose of the commission has not changed over the years. I am proud of our accomplishments and our role in preserving Geneva's heritage and sense of place. Further, I am honored to have served with many fine individuals who have brought so much knowledge and wisdom to the position. I have appreciated their insights and learned from every one. Finally, I can't say enough about the contributions of the historic preservation staff. From Dick Unch to Carla Kalfas to Michael Lambert, these talented planners have truly helped shape the commission into the gold standard that it is today. Therefore, though I am resigning, I am very confident that I leave the commission and our legacy to our children in good hands. I look forward to seeing the work continue and to the ongoing preservation of Geneva.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yep, you're going to be sorely missed, and
But not until May 31st.
we got one more meeting.
You got one more meeting out of it.
Do we have to accept the resignation?
I would like not to, but she'd just start missing meetings then. and
Yeah,
we'd
I
have
think
to
that
kick
you
her
all
out.
have noticed that I have missed meetings, and I've raced back from business trips for meetings, so I appreciate your understanding.
Sure.
Appreciate you.
All right, any other new business from the public? Yes.
I'm Gloria Ann Campbell, 18 South Sixth Street, and I just kind of gets me right here because I hate to think of Nan not being here. I think she's contributed so much in her knowledge and expertise, and you will be duly missed.
We feel the same way.
I'm sure. You're denying it, right?
There's an appeal process.
Oh, good.
Isn't this a case of demolition that you have to look into?
Gloria
All
Ann,
right.
well, I was going to ask, can I ask Gloria
Sure.
Ann a question? Gloria Ann, does the Geneva History Museum, have they given any thought to letting the commission know about the proposal for the trolley tours during Swedish days?
Has there been direct communication to this ordinance?
I was just wondering if
Has not.
if the History Museum is planning on just letting us know about that.
Well, I think that we could do that.
Okay.
Which, I mean, just for general knowledge, that that's an event that's going to take place during Swedish Days, and it will be traveling because of, we all know what Swedish Days are like in traffic, it will be traveling the perimeter of the historic district.
Okay.
Every hour, half hour, about, you know, it's air-conditioned and handicapped accessible and all that. So we hope that it'll expose historic Geneva to more people, and then if they wish to actually tour and get in the midst of it, I mean, the History Museum does have a walking tour of history of buildings downtown, so thanks.
Fantastic. All right. Oh, okay. How about you, Marty? Got some closing comments for us?
Yeah, one last thing. This is continued until, what was the date?
May 19th.
May 19th. The mayor has, I guess, committed in writing, but I'm sure he can change that, to reviewing it at the COW on May 26th. Would it be your anticipation? That's still the plan, so it would be your anticipation that when this comes back from Mr. Lambert, it will I'm sure it'll be done the way you've done it, so it'll be a quick yay or nay. So on the 19th, we can still count on the 26th.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I don't see too much discussion on the 19th on this. It's mostly
I'm-
over the changes from the attorney.
I may not even come. What are you going to do without me?
We would miss you. All right, Liz, you had something?
I want to go back to Nanette. We haven't always
We
agreed
closed
on
that
everything, but,
discussion out.
yeah, no, Nanette. No. Okay, what I wanted to say is I visited her office today, kind of by surprise, and I want to just alert you all that on 3rd Street, wait, I have all their buttons in my pocket for 25 North, but you all reviewed that building in Geneva. How many of you have gone inside it? It is stunning, stunning. It is drop dead, the whole project. I know your focus is the exterior, which I think is also stunning. With and I see this as an award down the road, certainly from our organization. The wood-like panels that are outside the bank are actually made out of a kind of an aluminum called longboard, and I think you all reviewed that. You did a good job reviewing it. The next phase with the patio is going to be great, but man, that is moving into the 21st century plus. I mean, it is what historic preservation is going to be about in the future, is repurposing some buildings that were just neglected. And, who knows about 6th Street School? I don't know if somebody could have that kind of vision, but stop and go inside it and you will be just amazed. And they have preserved old ledgers from the bank that were carried over from 2 bank buildings before, so they have on the wall in museum kind of framing and all protection from 1912, and I looked in 1914, and I looked, and Nell Fabian's name is on them. She's cashed a check, and they've recorded it. So anyway, so I saw Nanette's wonderful office there, but wow, this is really a feature in the downtown. We got a lot to celebrate, but go in and they welcome people going in the door there.
And
So-
everybody is more than welcome to visit me.
To visit you.
There.
Yeah,
I was there?
Thought you were in St. Louis and Springfield and.
No, well, today I was there.
When she's there, you're welcome
I'll
to
be
visit.
there, we're welcome
I'll
to
be in
visit her.
St. Louis on Thursday and Friday.
What time do you get there in the morning? Because I go to Starbucks at 7. I don't think
Yeah, Taylor's US Bank. All right, last item is,
And Chairman Roy, I have
want to do that after we adjourn?
I have a question to ask you.
Sure.
Is it appropriate for those of us who are on the commission and who are interested to call the aldermen and talk with them about the proposed ordinance and to offer to answer any questions if they have? Is that appropriate?
I'm sure you can do that.
I don't see why not.
Not only our own individual aldermen, but the other aldermen as well?
Yeah.
That's okay
I think it's okay. I think it's okay to offer.
to offer?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right. Next item is motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Good.
Hallelujah.
Has